Nós temos um enorme prazer aqui de receber a professora Ana Grandori, que, como eu digo para vocês, é a papisa do termo Knowledge Governance, né? Na realidade, ela foi a primeira pessoa que cunhou esse termo e que tem utilizado de uma forma bastante criativa e em vários campos do conhecimento, mais amplos até do que nós soubemos no início. A professora Ana, da Universidade Bocconi, em Milão, e ela a graduação, pós-graduação, o doutorado dela é em Economics, em Economia, e ela diretora do Instituto de Sistemas de Organização e Informação. Essa página que eu estou aqui lendo é a página pessoal dela, do Department of Management Technology, da Universidade de Bocconi. Então, realmente, esses temas e o conjunto dos interesses dela, que são em governance, em conhecimento, em decision-making, em redes organizacionais e em desenho organizacional, são de grande interesse para o PPED, para o nosso Programa de Políticas Públicas, Estratégias e Desenvolvimento. E, desde logo, eu agradeço imensamente a ela e também aos professores Décio Zilberstein e Silvia Sais, da USP, que, na realidade, foram responsáveis pela vinda dela para um evento que vai acontecer, começa domingo, dia 3 de outubro, segunda e terça, numa cidade pitoresca de Gonçalves, em Minas Gerais, e que é uma network, uma rede que se chama Institutions and Organizations. Eu gostaria que vocês anotassem isso, porque essa rede, Institutions and Organizations, todo ano ela organiza um seminário extremamente importante e traz scholars do mundo inteiro, principalmente com, digamos assim, o desenvolvimento de questões teóricas, de interesses teóricos na área de neoinstitucionalismo, né? No caso, a professora Grandori, eu acho que é mais do que isso, porque ela vem abordando com uma perspectiva muito mais de construir pontes entre diferentes perspectivas teóricas, building bridges in different theoretical perspectives, que eu acho que é mais interessante do nosso ponto de vista, que é muito mais próximo do que nós estamos, na realidade, buscando, pesquisando, desenvolvendo no programa de políticas públicas. Então, acho que isso tem um enorme interesse. Eu quero agradecer imensamente à professora, não só a ela, mas também eu gostaria que ela passasse esses agradecimentos ao Décio Zilberstein e à Silvia Sass, porque permitiu que nós tivéssemos essa oportunidade de conhecê-la e de poder, talvez mais adiante, convidá-la para um período mais longo aqui no PPED, né? Já disse que ela está convidada para passar um período aqui, que acho que vem de encontro realmente a várias das nossas perspectivas teóricas que estamos iniciando o desenvolvimento no programa de políticas públicas, que afinal é um programa jovem. Então, por favor, seja muito bem-vinda, teremos enorme prazer em escutá-la.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. I understood everything. I mean, thank you for speaking so clearly and so nicely. And it's all, my pleasure to be here, and already had a sense with a brief talk with Professor Castro that we might have really converging interest, concern, attitude, but so I want to introduce the theme linking to these informal talks, and please, if you, and please feel free to interrupt, to make questions, to bring me out of the presentation wherever in direction of your interest, because I learned something about the institution, the program, and on a personal concern, but I don't know you, so feel free to make the use you want of this discussion. So let me add to the presentation in the background, that I used to have, let's say, a background but also a passion in philosophy of science. And that came even earlier than in the scientific lyceum and early training. In addition to family, I come from a family of scientists, natural science, basically physics, mathematics, etc. So I had this concern on the nature of knowledge to start with, and that's led to when I choose to be in economics, to interpret the economy and more as a problem and a phenomenon linked to the growth of knowledge rather than to a problem of cost and the allocation of scarce resources. Because, and in a way, I think this might be attractive intellectually, but it's also a real problem, especially in development and growth, because the real long-term basis for growth is actually the growth of knowledge. That's and the growth of technology and the growth of so resources are not there to be scarce and distributed. So a more interesting problem to me, and I think for the development, is not just how to allocate these resources that are there and should be distributed, but how to generate, develop those resources, especially knowledge resources. So the problem is that we don't have so many tools in this area, because of course, economics is defined as mostly a science of allocation of scarce resources. And in fact, and this is the decision-making side of my interest, also decision-making, it's more about that. You have given alternative, given resources, given problems, and you try to optimize or maximize something. But the problem is with the given. Okay. So I think that another observation that might be of some interest is that there has been a lot of concern, even in the research space view that you are probably familiar with a sort of competitive view of resources. So we want unique resources, the rare resources, inimitable resources, but this is not the entire story at all. I mean, we might be interested also in research that are valid, that are reliable, that solve problems. But it's not all a matter of competitive value. And these are the concepts, in fact, that are central to knowledge. So the issue is, do we have any tool for developing valid and reliable knowledge and applicable to the problem we have to solve? This is a huge hole in, I would say, in social science. So why I'm saying there is a hole? So the title now is from cognitive to epistemic, but could be the two epistemic is fine, but I think it might reach, so this view of knowledge that takes seriously the validity and the problem of how to construct valid and reliable knowledge. And it's an alternative or a development, not also with respect to a cognitive tradition, but also with respect to a research-based tradition, and also with respect to the sociological tradition and the sociology of knowledge tradition. Back some years ago, in 2002, I edited a special issue on knowledge and organization with Bruce Coggott, and we were debating. In fact, we finally figured out to have an introduction to the special issue, not written together, but written in a form of dialogue, because he was more on the research-based and sociology of knowledge side, and I was more on the what I'm calling more the epistemic side. And in fact, what we were arguing about is that a lot of the literature that is used also in organization and management related to knowledge has a sociological origin. And the sociology of knowledge, I mean, like Paul and Kuhn and this kind of authors, actually have mostly be concerned with describing how scientific community work in practice. That's what sociology does. It describes how real social systems work. What I was trying to argue is that, I mean, this is fine, it's useful, I mean, no question. But if there is a neglect of a more prescriptive area, which is existent actually in the philosophy of science and logic of science and philosophy of knowledge, which is not oriented to describe everything that happened, how people reason, how scientists reason even, or how knowledge is produced, but on the best pattern of thought and action. Not on the common, not on the frequent, the best and still possible. So this will be the tradition of Popper, of Lakatos, of this kind of thinker, or Bertrand Russell even. So I think in Lakatos was more evident than in anyone else. So he opened this line of thinking that is the rational reconstruction of history of scientific ideas. So to detect the best pattern of thought of scientists. Not everything scientists do, because we are no better than any other. You know, we use trick and dirty thing. We use social pressure. We get into power games. We don't want to mix everything up. We want describe how the community works. We want to single out, if possible, some best pattern of thought or superior pattern of thought and action. So going back to no, I just of course did a mistake immediately. Should be that, but it doesn't go. Yeah, should be that, but proximal, but yeah, let's see, proximal. Why it doesn't work? Maybe this. Ah. Should be like that. This one. Okay. Yeah, and try before we put that. So it has worked. So let's go on. So excuse me. So let's take address the issue, especially with respect to the cognitive tradition here. Okay, I mentioned that we might also link to some other or traditions. Knowledge is constructed mainly on the basis of what we call heuristics, which are methods for discovery. Okay, so that's the first thing that we might understand. The problem is that all the cognitive tradition has at least addressed the problem of where knowledge comes from, differently than economics or even sociology or even research-based view. The problem is that the approach has been in all behavioral science, including behavioral economics to a good extent, a view of these processes of knowledge construction as limited, biased, weak thought kind of thing. So in fact, the emphasis that you might know from the tradition of Simon, Kahneman, Tversky, etc., is how we are trapped in actually mistakes, or let's say, if not mistakes, shortcut for getting to a solution, saving on mental effort, saving on cost of search, and the emphasis has been polemics toward economics and say this is how things work, this is how people really think, and not in a way in which economics would prescribe. Well, this emphasis, interesting as it has been, and I had a large part of my background once I entered in the organization and economics was in this tradition. I developed my first paper having Simon reading it, so I was in the Carnegie Mellon nest in a way. The problem is that I early noticed, having the other lenses of philosophy of science, that here there is a big hole. And one of the contradiction that make me move has been the contradiction between the meaning of the word heuristics in the two fields. And in fact, heuristics in social science, in fact, is always defined as a sort of shortcut for finding quickly and with little effort some solution. In logic and philosophy, heuristic is the method of science. It's the method for research. So it's a rational discipline. What are the correct, sound, valid method for knowing and doing research? So we all study methodology of research. That's heuristics. That's called heuristic as a discipline in philosophy. So I'd say, oh, this is strange. Okay, heuristics means to find, eureka in Greek. Fine. There are some rational way to find and some dirty and quick way to find and some completely mistaken way to find. So we cannot mix all them up. It's like we as scientists, are told, you want to save your mental effort when you do research. Well, maybe, but the advice and the training is try not to do so and try to prescribe some good method. So why we treat manager, decision maker, policy maker in a different way? They are as intelligent as we are, no doubt. So why we treat them like a sort of minor, they are interested in rational discovery as we are, the rational discovery of action. So this is what the last paper actually I have written is about, which might be quoted next, which is a rational heuristic model of economic decision making, just published in Rationality and Society in last month. So. Okay, oh, you moved. Okay, this is, the paper is quoted. This is, I don't mean to really get into all that stuff, but this is to show that what I tried to do here is to construct a repertory of rational heuristics to cite the repertory of behavioral heuristics that we have. Some of them for sure. Availability, representativeness, anchoring, self-confirmation traps, etc. These are called the heuristics in the behavioral tradition. But these are biasing heuristics. So the advice is avoid them. Fine. To do what? Okay, this is what is the positive side. At least this is the attempt. And as you can see, the from some of the quotes. I mean, the repertory of rational heuristic for scientific discovery has been an important source, but not the only source. We have other fields in which another author, at least, where we can find useful things. For example, the old work of Bandura, that you probably know, the foundation of thought and action, actually is interesting in this respect because he had these three learning models. Learning from experience. Fine. Learning from vicarious experience. Well, both this way of proceeding that are so dear to the evolutionary tradition, okay, are very costly, very error prone. If we learn only by experience, I mean, we will be all dead. I mean, you know, too many mistakes, too long a period. Okay, so, and we might have even no experience. So actually, recent literature on entrepreneurship and decision making in new venture, in new setting, emphasize that we better have theory in new field, make hypotheses ex ante, model a problem in new ways, because we don't have the experience even. Either our experience, personal experience, direct experience, or vicarious experience. Okay, so modeling is something that we do, in fact, in science all the time. We construct a model of the problem. That's what we need in making any decision. So how long are we? Yeah. Systematic observation, hypothesis-driven observation. So all this discussion of local search or exploration. Yeah, what's the guidance? I mean, if we are a real decision maker, what should we do? We don't know. Well, we know that local search may be tricky. But where do we look? Far? Well, it's a bit generic, right? So what we actually do I think in our real life, if we are wise person, as well in science, is to make hypotheses of where to look, to construct a causal model of our problem. For example, that a policy in education will result in certain effect. I mean, that's the model, that's a causal hypothesis, and the data should be gathered according to this hypothesis, as we do in research, okay? Neither close nor far. I mean, these are not good guidance for, and of course, we test hypotheses, okay? So the idea is that decision-making and problem-solving if we are concerned with knowledge growth, should be seen as an hypothesis testing process. A rational hypothesis testing process, where rational means not the narrow deductive story that it became in economics, but is rational as Bertrand Russell would say rational, as Popper would say rational, sound, logically correct, at the best of our possibilities. Not omniscience. I mean, there is nothing of that sort. You know, I am polemic with that because, you know, that divide just blocked the development. I mean, in this sense, rationality has nothing to do with omniscience. This has to do with fallible knowledge, but as valid and as reliable as possible. Okay. So let's go. I prepared some cases that actually are drawn more from, actually not from public policy. I mean, this is an interview that I did personally in 2005 with an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, actually Italian as a background. I mean, as many of you are Italian, right? You know, the name and stuff. So, in fact, he was one of the founder of Genetech. So it's big stuff, big thing. A chemist by degree. And I say, well, I tell you a story. I was interviewing on his next startup because they are serial entrepreneur, right? So Genetech, serial entrepreneurs. Yeah. Okay. So he got his Genetech story. He cashed out his option and shares, and that's closed. Let's start another thing. But this started in a sort of strange way, because he was actually looking for an olive, a farm in Tuscany for the holidays. He wants to come back to Italy and have some oil production. He is a fanatic of good food and okay. So health food. So let's go back to Tuscany. And of course, he has also he wants to produce with artisanal, nice method. So he studied the old method for producing high quality oil. Is the Crea, Roberto Crea, and I think in the paper I sent you, there is this case, and you have the website also of the new firm he created. That took off on olive water. The story is that he started this production of olive. He discovered that it's better to produce without the seed, only with the pulp, and that production of olive oil had a huge waste problem. That the water, where do you put the water? You separate the water from the oil, and they throw away the water. And what he said, and this I quote exactly, is a my economic and environmentalist mind made me think, what a waste. And if we go next, he said, my chemistry, no. Oh, because we are maneuvering two people. My scientific and chemist mind actually suggests the question, do you know what you are throwing away? Have you ever analyzed it? And if olive oil is so beneficial, how come that water is something to be thrown away? Make a rational hypothesis. Olive water contains polyphenols as much as olive oil. One hypothesis, okay? No 100 alternatives to be rational. One, but sound, causally and theoretically based on chemistry and even common sense. I mean, you know. And on the basis of this causal hypothesis, he sent a sample of this water to be analyzed. And what it turned out is that the water contained, I think, 300 times more polyphenol than the oil. So he patented the process for extracting the water. And at the same time, he, I guess, is even paid by the olive oil producer because he utilized the water, and he founded a startup to utilize on the patent for the olive water processing and extracting the polyphenol. I don't know, hundreds of products, cosmetics, dietary foods, and whatnot based on this polyphenol. So that was the finance. Okay, so what are the heuristics here in this interesting process? That has been growth of knowledge, creation of resources within an economic decision making that has very little to do with cost, with resource allocation, with all this story. It will pay off. Actually, it made a lot of money. But that's a sort of side effect. It's a side effect, okay? And the problem is that another interesting thing is that if you proceed with the objective of making money, you have no substantive guide. Okay, there are thousand, infinite way of making money. So it doesn't tell anything in terms of what to do unless you have defined alternatives. Okay, you have to choose among them. But if you have to discover anything, what counts is the substantive hypothesis. And the economic result might come, and maybe we are not interested in economic results because we are a public organization, we want to maximize something else, you know. But the main, I think this is related also to the recent debate of why firm becomes such a dumb institution. I mean, while rather than oriented to invent something, to produce something useful, to solve some problem. You know, if firm were there only for making money, that would be a very uninteresting institution. The fact is that they are institutions that have a much wider portfolio of function, and in fact, they discover things, they invent products, they provide occupation, and all these are functions, you know, including to pay dividends to whoever invested, you know. So this is, you know, just a little relation to other kind of debates. No, I mean, this is our other. I want to go back. I prefer to move myself, if you don't mind, because I think I should learn. Maybe not very fast, but. Oh, it's not really working. That's why. Well, but I can. So if we go back to the, I can even do from here. I don't care. I mean, if it does go back. So if we go back here, so we might find some of these heuristics into that one case. There are other, we can, and I had some research both on, based on case study, on, and definitely I would like to make more. I mean, now we are trying to make protocol analysis and more rigorous analysis of these discovery-oriented decision-making processes. But basically, even at this stage, we can see the systematic data gathering according to hypothesis, the modeling of problems, the hypothesis testing. This inverted problem-solving strategy that one of the last student of Herbert Simon, Sarah Shavastri, I don't know if you know her work on effectuation, but basically we arrived at this, on that respect, in the same at detecting the same kind of heuristics, which is resources in search of use. I mean, means in search of ends, rather than the usual other way around. That's fundamental in the production of knowledge and innovative problem solving, because well, I think I might use this, it's okay. So in fact, the basic heuristics behind this new startup was an hypothesis that a useful resource might be hidden in water, and then a resource in search of uses kind of problem. What do polyphenol can do? We have polyphenol, fine. What do they can do? And this is a different resource-based story. It's not really to have unique or resources necessarily, but if you have one characteristic of resources is to have multiple uses. And a way in which penrods have been not used, that's something that I have in common with Nikolai Foss. We both say these things. I mean, the racer space view uses static version of Penrose. Like you sit on a very impressive, unique amount of resources. But the Penrose, the main point of Penrose was even not that. No. The main point was that resources come in bundles and have many possible uses and services and activities. And so from services, she said. So from this imbalance, knowledge development come, okay? Because you discover, oh, I know philosophy of science. What can I do with it? Okay? Well, bunch of things. Then you look for complementary resources because you always miss a piece, you know, and so you make an alliances, and this is how, where it develops. So that's why it's a theory of growth, and not a theory of competitive advantage. Okay, so that's, or at least it can be used for. That was his main intention, I'm sure, by Edith Penrose, and while the common use has been different. Okay. So let's say that it would be nice to use it if we are interested in growth and development and discovery and knowledge, to use the other way. The same can be said about Simon, basically. Everybody used Simon in terms of limit of rationality, cost of search, but he has a different twist, especially in the model of discovery works and not in the model of man works, that say, let's try to develop heuristics that are as efficient as possible. Well, he was concerned with the efficiency, but also, we can say, as effective as possible, as rationally as possible. And he actually agreed with that. I know, I mean, I hear that from him, that he was totally, in favor of this, while the common interpretation has been the sort of consolation of for our weakness, kind of thing, But okay, other heuristics. This is opportunistic multipurposeness, serendipity. Another trick that we use in science. But these are not dirty tricks. These are rational tricks. So given that there is so much uncertainty and complexity in knowledge construction, it's obvious that solving one problem we might end up in solving another. What's wrong with that? Nothing. Okay? Well, it's wrong if we have a fixed objective, because that's an increase of risk of failure that is immense. That's why it can be used and has been used in decision making, actually in public decision making especially. The tradition, for example, of evaluation research is one of, I think, of the closest, and has been developed exactly in public policy. Because the problem is that you set up a program with some hypothesis on the effect. But if you measure against a stated objective, the rate of failure is huge. Because you cannot predict the effect. In fact, you have a lot of error, trial and error going on. So in evaluation research in the public field, they turn quite early, even without making the nexus with rationality, decision model, etc. But as a matter of practice, in making research on the real effect of any public program and reevaluate against new objectives. So you set up a training education program for the employment objective. This is a failure. I mean, people do not find more employment, but it might have created another 5 side effects or unintended effects that are very valuable. Social integration, networks, other things. And in fact, if the program is evaluated against this multiple parameter, the result is different. But the issue is not even a control. Well, it's good even in terms of control, because the poor guys that are responsible of the program do not get killed without any, motive, really. But even more interestingly, knowledge is produced on which action produced what effect. And if you don't look at this, it's like wasting resources, because you invested, you see, oh, there is no result, so let's close it. That's a huge loss, also in economic traditional term. You waste the fund invested because you don't even realize the positive effect that you have produced. Okay, so that's the meaning of the story. Okay, the last heuristic that this is I try to stylize, detect, make emerge, is to use a logic of robustness rather than there is a tradition, not that wide, of the use of this term, robust action, in sociology, structural sociology. Robust action is an action that is judged positively from multiple point of view, multiple constituencies. So the single work that is most cited in this respect is John Paget's work on the rise of the Medici in Florence, Renaissance Florence. And it was a study of the basis of the Medicean power, which was based on a very clever robust action strategy, which means let's use marriages. Okay, what's a marriage is? Well, it's a multivocal, multifunctional thing, what is a firm or what is an alliance. So the marriage establishes social relation, has a patrimonial implication, has a policy implication, it's public. Relation between state or city-states, etc. And actually, this multifunctionality of almost any economic structure, governance mechanism, organizational practice is very important. And if you can design this, taking into account robustness, so that structure and action is more robust if it has positive consequences if seen from any one point of view. So it's positive for me for some reason. It's positive for you for a different reason. Don't pretend to align objective or have all the same objective. This is very fragile. But the fact, if an action is sort of an equilibrium, and it's not even, this is too strong a word, has positive consequences on different level and for different actors with different interests, this is more robust. Okay, this is a logic. If we use it as a decision-making device, that's interesting. And actually, I've used recently in works on contracts, okay, and contracts design. So it's like to shift from trying to foresee action and foresee contingency, which is the nightmare of contract design, or to leave the contract incomplete, and then you need to have power, authority, or whatever to complete the contract. Why don't we shift to a logic of robustness, like judge the resource, judge the partner, rather than the action and the contingency, and shift to a logic like, with that partner, something good might come up, no matter what, the contingency, the state of the world, and this is how we do actually proceed in making important partnership. And in fact, here I don't have the cases. I should have put the cases here. I have I don't know. But the case is we analyze, content analyze the document, the contractual document of alliances in a high-tech, complex setting, so biotech alliances. Okay, if you look at this contract, there are no action and no contingency. Okay, this is the important matter is who are the partner, what are the resource commitment, how they can exit. You know, they are more similar to marriage contracts, if we want an analogy, than to transaction contract. So the basic story is that if we had strong uncertainty and important action, association is the response, no transaction, okay? Association is the response. Okay, so this is actually in another paper that has been just published on the Journal of Institutional Economics, and it's called Asset Commitment, Constitutional Governance and the Nature of the Firm, because it has a bearance, of course, on the nature of the firm story. Okay, so let's see. So that's what are the governance implications here? Let's see. I think we are at the close to the governance implication of the story. Actually, this incursion in the contract theory is a governance implication. Okay, so the nature of contract should change under condition of strong uncertainty. Not the degree of articulation, the degree of completeness, the degree of what, the nature, the matter that are regulated change. And rather than regulate the transaction, they regulate an association among partners and among resources. Okay. Some other implication. Let's see what kind of implication, because I'm not sure even. To have focused so much on the contractual implication in this paper. So I apologize, because now I got a sense of the audience and I am adding things, and I might have presented also these cases, but that's it. These are, that's life, okay. And I don't want to falsify myself, I want to be adaptive, right? And learn, exactly. So, yeah, but the talk is also different. I prepared the talk for this, but so it will be different. Actually, for that audience, I had more this story on contracts, much more, exactly, because they are economists, and I know that there are a lot of contract theorists, but I sensed that you might have been interested, so that's why I mentioned it. So these are more sort of broad implication for governance, and actually more for organization and internal organization even of this story. Okay, I think we knew, so it's not entirely and completely accepted the proposition that the concentration of knowledge, the distribution of knowledge is an important matter for designing governance systems. I think I discussed and fought with Nikolai Voss for at least 10 years on this issue, because he could not accept this idea that the knowledge distribution make hierarchy fail. Okay, but this is what I think. Okay, I think that and not. I think it's not only my conviction. I think that Hayek thought this way to start with, and many other, Rademacher, etc. So the problem is that sort of simple. If you have to collocate the seizure rights, which are an important class of property rights, also with knowledge, because you don't want the incompetent to make a decision, you want the competent to make a decision. Then, if competence is distributed, everybody is better off with the distributed organization system. I cannot see where they why this may be. I mean, so far, that's the hypothesis. So, if we add not just the distribution, but the uncertainty, strong uncertainty. So, you cannot have a predefined subdivision of problems and responsibility because you don't know which the problem will be. What is not only the hierarchical allocation of decision right that fail, but it's also the near decomposability of the structure. So you cannot really articulate in a fixed way an organization structure into task partitioning. Yeah. Because the process of discovery needs an open society. Okay? An open society also within firm. And in fact, this is sort of in line with what we know about the new organization form, in organization in innovative companies, in organization in startups. We are doing research on that. In fact, we tend to find, right, and if they are not far, they try to go far. Okay, okay. So there is a reason why they. Exactly. So, what the economists, and including transaction cost economists, have a trouble in understanding, is that even the investor of financial capital, even the owner of the assets, are better off if they do not decide on things on which they are not competent. This is what it's difficult. The hypothesis that an actor is always better off if he decides as he see fit, as Oliver Hartwood would write. This is not the case. That's from an organizational theorist point of view. That's an old wisdom that the responsible of a large structure with distributed knowledge are better off they themselves in giving out decision right. It's not because we want motivation, participation, we want to please people. No, I mean, it's better decision making, better architecture of the firm to distribute those right. And all the movement on corporate disaggregation, this, deformalization, and to make to turn to an organization structure that is made by knowledge nodes that might shift. Everybody can choose the alliances according to projects of interest. Is a confirmation of this. I think that what we have said before are the micro foundation of this story. Okay, so the decision process is behind, which is I think good to have, because of course the traditional view is that the Simonian way of considering hierarchy and the composable system assume a different cognitive process, assume given problems, the composability of problems, classical bounded rationality. So this is not the entire world. Okay, we cannot live only and always with this view. Okay, that's the point. Okay, so that's another implication. So if knowledge is distributed and we have serious uncertainty, what we should expect is polyarchy, forms of polyarchy rather than form of hierarchy, and connected polyarchies rather than unconnected polyarchies, to use the word has been used by Shai Stiglitz, polyarchy and hierarchies. Polyarchy are markets. I mean, Not only markets. I mean, markets are unconnected polyarchies, fine, and very individual, disseminated. Yes. Yeah.
Then would be fit only for hierarchical.
I tried to do this one. I mean, I had a, uh, I must say that I just had a confrontation with Sid Winter last week in Milan, and since ever with Jim March, who's a good friend and father, you know, but uh, there is a, I mean, the relation is sort of the following. Well, the way in which I responded to Sid Winter is using his own pyramid, and that was in industrial and corporate change, rule-guided behavior. This kind of debate about money. I think that's one of the best recent piece by Sid Winter, who said, "Okay, routines are program of action. Heuristics are a step higher." So he had a sort of pyramid, uh, and even a third layer are um, paradigm. So he was using theory of knowledge himself. Okay, the paradigm are the things that are, in the theory and the taken for granted, however, because, the problem with Winter is that everything is taken for granted. The basis is taken for grantedness, which is nice because the very origin of evolutionary theory is to consider routine as genes. Okay, so if we don't stretch words to explain everything, routine rests on a logic of an automatic logic, an appropriateness logic, to use the March story. Okay, if it's cloudy, I take the umbrella. This is a program of action. If the conditions are such and such, that's the action. That's a routine. Okay. So, in heuristics, Winter is, yeah, yes, yes, yes. My, you know, you determine. Yes, my attitude, but of course this is a matter, to some extent, a matter of rhetorics, is that the research program in evolutionary economics stretched the meaning of routines in the face of a situation in which something else was needed. So that's something that happened in science, okay? Rather than say, well, routines are the automatic behavior genes, and so let's stretch the term, and the routine becomes high-level routines, become the logic of discovery, becomes everything. So everything is a routine at this point. So personally, I would not follow this rhetorics, and I would call things with their name, a different name. Okay? So I don't think we in science use only routines. Okay? So I don't think, yeah, you can say, or Winter would say, all your heuristic of scientific discovery are routines. Yeah, so everything is a routine. Okay? Any causal hypothesis is a routine. Anything. So I have trouble with that. Okay? So I think that this may even weaken somehow the interest of a research program, because the evolutionary economics was interesting, and March appropriateness was interesting because they were trying to explore where a system would be able to go without foresight. Okay, that's interesting because the system might go very far even without foresight. But if you say that a routine is also foresight, well, okay, that's everything. Okay, that would not be. So that's no. Yeah, and I don't think even it's a routine, because if the routine is a exploration and looking far, but that's a routine, I would say that's dangerous because it has this blind component. Okay, it's interesting in terms of descriptive research. So where do an organization that works with an exploration routine would go? I would say the rate of failure should be rather high. And this is okay. And this is what Jim March said when I say, I mean, this logic of appropriateness and local search, we should get rid of this story. And he responded, well, if you adopt the opposite routine of looking far, you will be in trouble 90% of the time. Right. So we need an intelligent, selective way, not routine-based way of looking far. That's the relation that I see. So, yes. So I don't think everything is a routine. No, I don't think so. And yes. Yeah. They were trying to develop a language for the distance control of equipment. Okay. The problem that they called initially awk this language, and they put into some product, and the product were a failure. So this is where the opportunism, in the face of failure, is not. That's another point also in the rationality story. It's not rational, not even necessary to lower aspiration level. This is a bad response. This is a sour grape fallacy. You know, a more intelligent and still possible response is to see what else to change with that rather than to lower. And this is what they did. They waited and put it in the drawer, the language, and they kept in mind what kind of utilization and use it might have. And as soon as the internet came as a possible platform, they immediately make the hypothesis that their language could have become a wonderful model for the internet. And this has been the case. That's how Java came out. So that's opportunistic multi-purposedness. So yeah, we can do one thing, but if the solution is not technically working, we can try to find other uses, other markets, so okay, so that may also be a process clearly behind diversification, behind this, the growth of anything. I mean, the economy, the region, or a firm. Okay, and it does not matter that much whether the entity is actually a firm, a public administration, a group, or whatever. Okay, because it's a more general thing. Okay, I think I'll stop here because yeah, I have some data, but yeah, some of the data. Just to, I think I would have liked to actually to bring some other appendix. So here there were some data on the governance of the new enterprise, what I informally said. If you go into the organization of a new firm where you have knowledge-intensive human capital investment, very highly distributed knowledge, high uncertainty, so they simulate this condition, the kind of governance you find is shared property rights between the owner of the knowledge and investor of the knowledge, and investor of other things like financial capital, etc. So you get what is usually not in the first place in organization and transaction cost economics. So the firm as a partnership of collective properties of different kind of investor. So this means decentralized governance in a strong sense, okay? Mean the shared property rights. And the organization we already mentioned is, let's put some other data that I think are more interesting, also statistically stronger. I mean, these were preliminary interview on the nature of firm funding contract between venture capitalist and entrepreneur. And what in fact this illustrate was the preliminary evidence illustrating the shift between contracting on action, contingency, anything, to demonstrate that contracts can be about who owns what, who the party are, what are the resources that should be committed, who decide. So that's what I call a constitutional contract, or rather than a transactional contract, okay? That has to do, and if you go into very uncertain context, that's what we tend to find. The issue that it's not that property rights are residual things that cannot be specified in contract. This is the very matter of the contract. The contract is only about property rights. So we don't need power, we don't need domination, we don't need fiat, we don't need anything. I mean, the contract specify who all the decision rights and etc. So in fact, we studied this document, and we have the very high specification of property rights and much lower specification of task and action. And this is also been statistically tested. This is a big research project on, that I directed on interfirm alliances. Actually, these are project-based alliances among entities, firm, public organization, whoever, in three sectors: high-tech, creative industries, and construction and engineering, in 6 countries. So we have 540 records of these projects, and it's a huge data set. But what I was interested here is that if you use this sector as a proxy of the level of uncertainty, so high-tech versus creative versus construction and engineering, what we expected is that the contracts in more uncertain sector should include more property rights and focus more on the constitutional part and property rights, and be not specify too many tasks. You know, we're on the nature we ally, and that we see what happened, while we expect that eventually in the construction and engineering project to have more task specification and less associational property right component. And in fact, is what it is. Okay, so here is an analysis of the statistical significance of the difference in the mean level of specification of contractual provision on property rights or on task, on description of action and contingencies. And what happened is that high-tech with respect to engineering is much more property rights contracting and much lower task specification. And this is true, I think, also for the creative over the engineering, less pronounced, as expected. So these are some relevant data, more on the approach that I was saying. And these are published in the Journal of Institutional Economics paper that I was mentioning on contracting of resources rather than on task. And, okay.
No, I'm sorry. In France, they're building a new nuclear reactor for 2020 to be in production. That reactor is being built by 20 nations. It's already being built today. And they're building this now for 5, 6 years. And the interesting point is that the hierarchy of the organization of the construction of that reactor is on consensus. So every step that goes forward is decided by the consensus of the scientists and engineers at that point of time. And it means to me that there's the highest concentration of knowledge. And what is most interesting is how they use that knowledge to build this. And it's a unique example where you manage knowledge, build something at the same time with a high risk, high complex environment. I think this will be very worthwhile to analyze how this process is evolving. Because I'm an engineer, I cannot foresee that without a master plan and objectives and dates and other details, you can achieve something for the year 2020. But they're achieving it. It's progressing. And the other interesting part is these people don't know each other. So they bring in the scientists, they have to live together. They don't speak French language altogether, they speak reasonable English. And it takes about a year or two to get adopted in their own behavior to fit into this team and be productive. So this is a unique example of how you manage knowledge, and it's very similar to this one. I think
and there is a big issue that I touch only marginally on who owns the knowledge. Because if knowledge is distributed and the scientist is actually putting his own discovery into the new nuclear design, well, organizational economics will be right in asking who owns what? Who is going to appropriate the rent of the entire thing? How the scientists and engineers are actually compensated, or are they expropriated of what they invested? These are the issue behind. This is another component of why I think the association contract in various form and contracting on property rights is a response not only to knowledge growth, but in this sense also on conflict of interest and who, yes. In Brussels. Yeah. The name is ITE.
Have you heard about the new OECD project called Knowledge Network and Markets? Have you heard about it? It's yeah.
There are many.
Yes. Are you following the yeah? Yeah. Because this is, well, we're talking about this always in this conference, in this talk, in this conference, because it's a kind of organization, it's a network organization, kind of a technological platform, when you have really the network needs a market to be expressed. The how do you say that? Property rights are all the time, are important all the time. You organize the knowledge as a network. Yeah, but then you need a market, because this kind of knowledge is almost all of the knowledge is proprietary. Will be protected by IP laws, by IP rights. And then what is interesting is that this is a network, and a huge part of innovation now is being built in this kind of structure, organizational structure. It's a new kind of organizational structure that puts together different actors in innovation, and as a network, and also is a market, in the sense that all the rights are proprietary and shared by different
story that I think it's important, but is not here. which is that I think we should better realize that this category, this package like market, network, hierarchies, etc., are two packets. Okay, that's another old story. They should not be, I mean, they are institutions in the sense that they are historically realized with, in some way. But what is more useful in a design perspective, for example, how to promote innovation in such and such condition, that these packages do not help. Actually, the best way is to forget about the package, and because even to say we need some market, we need some network, we need some outdoor, it's too imprecise for really designing these things. Okay, so the idea, which also is follow in that respect the organization design tradition, is that we should conceive each one as an element, as a practice, as a mechanism, not as an institution, not as a package. Okay, so we should be able to put a little bit of market. A little bit means that we should know what it is. A property rights done such and such on this type of knowledge. Some residual rewards right for engineers. These are, the ingredients that has to do with a strong incentive. But then we need knowledge sharing. So let's put the platform and put some community elements, put some knowledge sharing platform, etc. Then we need some rules. So that's the old bureaucracy, fine. There is no system of that size that can work without any rule. So let's put the procedure, the basic laws, the basic rules, etc. So what comes out? It's a configuration, and it's totally useless to ask ourselves whether it is a market, a hierarchy, a net, or what it is. I mean, we should design, given the problem, given the transaction, given the type of knowledge, the appropriate cluster of mechanisms. And what turns out, usually, I say turns out because we have this research on the clustering of mechanisms, is that everything is hybrid. Everything is hybrid. So, but say that this is, but we should know nevertheless how to design this hybrid. Otherwise, and so that's other work of mine. I mean, this is called a chemistry of organization. It is, but in any case, it's work connected to the complementarity of mechanism, story, not getting out of the packages, and work with the elementary components of governance and organization for any particular kind of problems, and being able to design. That's the organization design thing. So, that's why I had in the past a lot of involvement on the European community, a European research project. I led a European Science Foundation project for 5 years. So that's why I'm a little bit more, but yes, I'm used to that. But
could you, perhaps with the gentleman here, elaborate a little bit on if you have protected knowledge through patents, and you have livelihoods of the engineers and the scientists and the people who developed a project like this, surely there should be a societal, political mechanism where that kind of technology, which could possibly, I don't know anything about the details of the nuclear thing, but there have been nuclear, very polemic situations where nuclear radiation has escaped and so on. And society needs a model where we are able to put the safety guarantees in the application of these wonderful technologies and ideas, and have a participative decision in a more general sense, not to repeat the mistakes of the last century. How would you see the development of a political model which satisfies the economic interests and keeps the jobs of the scientists and the engineers and so on and so forth. Have you got any ideas on that?
If I stay here 6 months,
Please do.
I think there will be very many changes in the next 10, 15 years because the European organization, Europe, the community now, they're working since the 90s to develop the clustering concept. And clustering in the industry, in science, is getting so complex and so diffuse in Europe that you lose really the control who knows what and who does what and who could do something. And this will evolve. And I was in Europe last year and I was in Europe this year following these things. And I think for the society, the human society, it's a great benefit. But political and rewarding for scientists or even the industry is very, very complex. And I think there will be a lot of changes in the next 10, 15 years on copyright, on patents, and so on. And there are some basic steps done today in the countries. For example, one basic step, I had a meeting with the consulate here. The German consulate said, for the industry who defines something, for the industry who tests a pattern. Let's say we have an iron bar, a new iron bar that is this long, this thick, and it withstands that pressure. Who does this and defines this? He is putting out a pattern, and most probably he will own the industry in the future for that. So the countries are getting organized to defend their ISO standards because those who have the standards.
a long discussion, not necessarily. I don't think that we can really solve with this tool. I mean, to be frank, I mean, I think actually I've been into the network problem to a large extent, and there might be some tools for responding. But I feel that this is really a different discussion, to a good extent. Different discussion.
Acho que foi um impacto, assim, uma viagem, né? Essa oportunidade que tivemos aqui. Quero agradecer a professora Ana Grandori, esperar que nós tenhamos a oportunidade de, enfim, estreitar, sobretudo com alunos e professores aqui do programa e de outros programas de pós-graduação da UFRJ, os contatos, né? Eu posso depois passar o slide. Seria bom ter. Vocês assinaram a lista com os e-mails, aí a gente poderia então enviar isso para que fosse possível continuar esses contatos mais adiante com a professora. Enfim, desde já agradeço muitíssimo, foi uma oportunidade fantástica tê-la aqui e, enfim, aguardamos os próximos passos.